So I've been very busy doing the planning for the garden, figuring out what exactly I will actually be able to plant, which I have discovered is going to be a lot different than what I had actually originally planned. The area actually isn't big enough for what we need to plant, which I'm actually kind of grateful for because we are going to have a really big garden. So what we're looking at here is a garden planner application that I've been using, and I'll try and put a link below, but I'll probably forget. So what you're looking at here, these blocks are 3 foot by 20 foot raised beds is what the hope will be. And everything will be heavily mulched in between and also throughout each of the beds as needed. The reason that we chose to do the 3 by 20 size instead of something larger, first of all, I wanted something that I could just look at one little bed at a time rather than looking at this whole huge job that needs to be done, just to encourage us and the kids when we're working. Another thing is that I've got 3 feet in between each of these beds, both lengthwise and widthwise, and the reason for that is just easier access. Over the years we'll probably decrease the size of the rows, but I'm going to be severely pregnant, so I want to be realistic as to how much room I'm going to need to move around in this place. I did a count, and there is going to be 120 of these beds, and all in this area over here where the mouse is circling around is actually our old existing garden with our apple guilds and our building and our hugel beds. So there will be even more things growing than this. The brown area going along the side all the way down, that is just a pathway that we can use wide wheelbarrows, and that my husband will be able to get in with his skid steer. Same thing for this green path here. This is just going to be a main pathway for larger things, so we can get around easier for the heavier jobs, because I don't want equipment going around as much as possible anyways, but we'll also be able to store extra mulch down along this end as needed, just for more easy access to what we need so we can keep up on mulching. Because we're really not planning on pulling a whole bunch of weeds. We're planning on just kind of throwing more mulch on top of it as we go. This end here of the garden is the north end, and this end up here is the south end. And along the driveway goes along the south end of the garden, and there are some trees along there. So these first few beds here will be exposed to partial shade, which is kind of why things are a little bit unorganized as to, they're not all in the same area, just to compensate for some of the things getting more shade than others. As well, on the far end, the north end of this green path, this whole end here will have bedding and things like that that had been put on it, that have been pooped and peed on by the livestock throughout this winter, and it hasn't composted yet. So we'll be mulching heavily on top of that, but just out of extra caution's sake, I chose not to plant anything that would be harvested directly out of the ground in this area. I did a lot of research, and actually quite a few people told me not to worry about it. But I thought, well, just in case, I'm going to put all of our root crops up here where everything's been composted properly, just in case. I don't want to discourage us from growing our own food at all. So anyways, it's going to be a pretty extensive project, but we're looking forward to getting started on it. And you know, I'm hoping that I'm setting things up properly. I've been trying to set things up in a smart way for less work for us. One example would be like trellising, things like that. I don't know how much time or energy we're going to have to be building structures and things like that. So one example would be along this edge here, we actually have field fencing. And so I have all of my peas planted along there. And then the rest of the peas that are spaced about 50 feet apart, for seed saving purity sake, I've planted with corn, so that hopefully, I'm hoping that it'll kind of just climb up that. Another example is the cucumbers I planted with the with our sunflowers, so that they would have something to grow up. But also the sunflowers are there as a bit of a windbreak. Last year we had a couple of really bad windstorms, and they absolutely decimated the place. So as well with this garden here, we really like our carrots, so I figure, well, I'll just put one little row through there, and we can eat those right away just as snacks, as the rest of the stuff develops. And then by the time that we're done eating them, I'm hoping that the rest of the things, like the Swiss chard and these peas, would have filled in. Let's see, what are some other things that I had to think about while I was doing this? One thing that you might notice is there's certain things that are kind of planted together. Like I have onions planted in with other plants. I have flowers scattered throughout the garden as well, and I don't have them marked out all that great. The reason that I have it like this is I'm hoping to encourage beneficial bugs to come into the garden, and there's also compounds within those certain plants that have been proven to ward off certain diseases and mildew and other pests. So I'm just kind of trying to work with nature here. And the reason I wasn't too specific about how I put the flowers in there is what I'm hoping is that, for example, when we come and plant our peppers in here, I'm going to have a lot of little helpers helping me, and things aren't going to be planted perfectly. So I figure, well, we'll just underestimate how much room we need for these peppers, and then we can just fill in whatever space we have left at the bottom with some flowers. So lots and lots of potatoes and carrots, because those are things that we know that we're going to eat. Excuse me. I tried to consider which way the shade would be created by the tall plants in comparison to the short plants. So I really tried to consider that. I had to shuffle things around a lot because I've never actually put this much thought into a garden in my entire life. I'm used to either my parents had planned it out, or I just kind of plan what I want to eat and I just go out to the garden and start throwing things in. But I'm anticipating that we're going to need to get some help in when it comes time to do the whole planting job. So this is something that I can actually print off a few copies of, and I'll be able to give it to whoever it is that's helping me with the planning or with the planting, and then, you know, people kind of know what they're doing, and I'm hoping that that'll be helpful. Another thing about this planner is that once you're done, you can go through and you can click on this plant list, and it actually lets me know how many of each of the different things I'm going to be planting. Like, it totals it even though it's in different locations in the garden. So this will be really helpful for me. My next step is to plan how many trays I need to buy for planting things ahead. I already have my asparagus started and my ground cherries, but other than that, I haven't made it any farther. So anyways, I just wanted to give you guys an update on what was going on. It's kind of a gloomy day outside. It's a bit cloudy, so I didn't really want to go out there, but almost all the snow is out of the garden now, so we should be able to start getting out there and get going on making these beds.